It's hard for me to, yeah.
That's okay, because my slide doesn't have a whole lot about me.
So are we on live? Yes, we are.
Yes.
Welcome everybody to this collaborative speaker series with Save California Salmon, the Indian Natural Resource Science and Engineering Program, the Yurok Tribe today, and as well as the Native American Studies Program and all their awesome stuff going on there, Food Sovereignty Lab and other things. So all of us are coming together to bring this to you, and we have a special co-host, Danielle. And Danielle, take it over.
Hey, young everybody. Hello, I am Danielle, the Youth Coordinator for Save California Salmon. I'm going to be introducing our awesome presenter in just a moment. I just have a couple of housekeeping announcements to start us out. If there is a donation link for SES, that will be dropped in the chat. And then for we had a large Northern California land back conference last month, and that is now available on YouTube. I will also drop that link in the chat in a moment. And now, as we get into welcoming our amazing presenter, Felicity. Felicity Cross is a restoration engineer for the Yurok tribe. She's a Yurok tribal member and Pit River descendant from the villages of Redwood, Meta, and Big Lagoon. She graduated from Humboldt State University, now known as Cal Poly Humboldt, in 2021 with a BS Environmental Science, or a BS in Environmental Resources Engineering, and a minor in Geospatial Information Systems. She works with the Yurok tribe's fisheries teams as a restoration engineer and UAV pilot. And the tribe's projects revolve around river restoration on the Trinity, Sacramento, and Klamath rivers. Today, she will be discussing coastal estuary and creek restoration in the Prairie Creek watershed. So with all of that amazing information being said, I'm going to hand it over to Felicity. Thank you so much for being here.
Great. Thank you, Danielle, for the awesome introduction. Like she said, I'm going to be presenting on a project we've been doing on the coast, Prairie Creek, located in Yurok. Because I had such a great introduction, I could zoom through this slide of the about me. Everything has been pretty much said. If I were to add anything, it'd be that I am a dog mom. I grew up in Humboldt. I love Humboldt, and I love my doggies. And as you can see, we have a lot of fun together. So just to break the ice a little bit. So what I'm going to be presenting on today is going to be an overview of what I do as a part of my team in the Yurok tribe. And then I'll kind of discuss a little bit about what our tribe's team does. And then I'll go into the Prairie Creek project and talk about what has been done and what will continue being done at. So I am part of the Yurok Tribe Fisheries Department Design and Technical Services Program. It's quite a mouthful, so we say TSP for short. And our program, the TSP team, it's a very collaborative team with a whole lot of different type of people in there, and with the ultimate goal of restoring river and stream systems. So we have engineers, we have surveyors, we have technicians, we have fish biologists, geospatial people. So we're a very diverse team. And we all have tasks that we go out and do, and then we come together and make really nice stuff happen, like the project you will be seeing today. Another highlight of our team is we work in collaboration with a new branch of the Yurok tribe. It's called Condor Aviation, and it's a LiDAR and geospatial program. And we just started that last year, and it's comprised of a couple airplanes, a very big LiDAR system, and we're taking contracts to go and collect LiDAR not only in Yurok ancestral territories, but we're trying to expand into the whole North Pacific and Alaska, actually. So last year we set off this new program with our first client with the Yakutat tribe in Alaska. And we had team members go and collect all that LiDAR data, and I've been helping process that LiDAR data. And so the goal of that program is to kind of help other tribes out and then expand and then take over kind of a natural resource data collection industry in our area. So one of the projects that we are working on, it's one of many, is the Prairie Creek site. And this is a huge multi-organization collaborative project. It's led by Save the Redwoods League, but we are partnered and collaborating with a dozen or so agencies. And I want to give a shout out to all these agencies because without them, this project wouldn't be possible. So we have California Trout, the National Park Service, California State Parks, and then the Yurok tribe as some of like the first collaborators on this project. And then we have our consulting engineers, which is Northern Hydrology and Engineering. We have SHN working with us and McBain and Associates. And we also work with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, the Coastal Conservancy, the Wildlife Conservation Board, NOAA, and then the Redwood Community Action Agency. And then we should be partnering with the California CCC going forward. So there's a lot of people very invested into this project, and I think that helps with the success and kind of just the awareness and the publicity around this project. So I'm going to go a little bit on the background. This site is located right off the 101 where it hits Bald Hills Road, so right at that junction. Prairie Creek flows into Redwood Creek, and then Redwood Creek goes out into the ocean. So our project site is right at the confluence of Prairie Creek and Redwood Creek. Redwood Creek, unfortunately, from the ocean almost up to this point, has about 3 miles of levee that kind of inhibits floodplain habitat and the estuary habitat. Prairie Creek itself is one of the first refuge places that fish species encounter when they're coming back from the ocean or going to the ocean. So it's kind of the first and last place of refuge for any fish migration in this area. This site is located within the Yurok ancestral territory, which is awesome. And it's a very important site to the Yurok tribe because it's allowing us to be in a project in our homelands and making a difference. So the Yurok tribe, myself personally, we're very happy to have these coastal projects within our homelands. And then also to be able to take a very active role in what's happening to these sites. So this project is where the former Oric Mill site was, and the Oric Mill was operational between 1960 and 2009. During this time, they harvested a lot of old growth redwoods, a lot of other tree species, and just processed a lot of timber at this site. In 2013, the Save the Redwoods League actually bought this property, and they're the ones who reached out to the various partners with the idea of restoring this site. Unfortunately, because of all the because all the human activity, including like new settlements into the lands, the creation of roads, the logging, obviously, all this kind of contributed in a negative way and distorted the natural flow of Prairie Creek. And Prairie Creek actually used to run right through this site. Used to go right through here and connect. And now it's kind of 101, which is unfortunate. Due to the logging activities, there was, it caused a lot of like instability on the hill slopes, and the instability led to sediment increase, and there is a lot of sediment deposited into the stream in the floodplains of this area. And typically in a natural free-flowing stream that's healthy, the sediment's able to move freely, but because of the way the channel has become and because of constriction points at the south, especially where it meets the bridge at Prairie Creek, It's unable to transfer that sediment properly, and it gets backlogged. And because this creek no longer has a floodplain, you just get a lot of sediment deposit, and that, just distorts fish habitat, and it just causes unhealthy conditions in the stream. Well, the good news is, north from the site where Prairie Creek continues into Redwood National Park, it's actually in very good condition. It's pristine habitat. There's a lot of salmonid species through that. So we know that this whole system is able to support fish species and have a healthy ecosystem around it. We just have to be able to make this site where it meets Redwood Creek also pristine. So a healthy stream system connects to a floodplain. Unfortunately, Prairie Creek is incised, and what that means is this picture below is that there's very steep side banks of it, and the water is unable to connect to this floodplain. As opposed to this, when the water rises, it could overflow into this floodplain, and that kind of acts as a refuge for fish. Who like slower moving water. They like hiding spots and stuff, especially when there's high flows. So this is the current state of Prairie Creek. There's about 6 to 10 feet from the existing stream into the floodplain when we first started work. And so if you're fishing here, you really have nowhere to go, especially when there's storm events. That water is just moving fast, and there's no hiding spots for these fish to go. So the background on fish, this slide is dedicated to Max. He actually created this because he's our fish guy. The current species in Prairie Creek are Chinook, coho, steelhead, and then cutthroat trout. And these fish kind of like to rear in freshwater habitats for about 16 to 18 months. And so during that first time, they like to stay in the creeks throughout the summer and through the low flow months. And then when the flows start picking up, they move on and continue their journey. In order for them to be healthy and prosperous, they need like nice habitat in order to, I like to say, hide away. You hear that a lot, hide away from these fast flowing streams and just find refuge. And so they like to have large wood structures, low stream gradients, so relatively flat areas, and slow water habitats. So being able to provide them log jams or, woody habitats, alcoves, backwaters is essential to their survival and how well they'll do in the future. So project goals for Prairie Creek. This is a very large project, and it's a very large ongoing project. And overall, the two main goals are to restore the ecological integrity of Prairie Creek, then also to establish this trails gateway area. And this would provide access into the Redwood National and State Park. So this project was purchased by Save the Redwoods Leagues, and they have the intention after completion is giving it to the state parks. So then people will be able to come to the site. It'll connect a trail system to the existing national and state parks and just be protected from here on out, which is great. The restoration efforts for this site will enhance approximately 1 mile of Prairie Creek, starting from the Redwood Creek confluence and moving upwards. And it's going to repair about 18 acres of riparian and wetland floodplains. The goal of it is to create essential complex, slow water rearing habitat. And this allows juvenile salmon and other salmonid species to grow bigger before entering the ocean, therefore increasing their survival rates. For the Trails Gateway area, like I said, it's to connect to the Redwood National Park, and the goal is to provide a cultural and educational basis. So there's going to be a Yurok tribal site going in, and then, alternative trail systems, bike systems, and it's just to provide a nice place for people to come and learn not only about the cultural significance of the site, but then see the kind of restoration efforts that are ongoing. So now I'm going to go into a little bit more of the technical side of things when it comes to operations. And the operations are kind of complex, but they're fun. So the TSP, the Technical Services Program for the Yurok tribe, we do a lot of the technical operations on site. So we conduct LiDAR flights, hand serving with RTKs. We do the large wood placement, and then we're in charge of a lot of the physical revegetation of the site. And this is the drone I fly. This is a Harris HX8. It's a custom made drone. And right here, it's attached with a Regal LiDAR sensor. You can't really tell how big it is in this photo, but it's about the size of a lawnmower. And it's really cool. I have a computer system. It's not just a controller, but a whole computer station that flies this drone. So we do a LiDAR flight at this site, typically every 2 weeks, and then we create a report, send it out to the engineers who communicate with the construction crew, and it just continues cycling. But this drone has really high resolution. It can get up to 2 centimeter precision on the stuff, and I'll show you some pictures later, or actually the next slide. And it's just a really fun part of my job. So I wanted to share that. So we take on a variety of project duties as part of the technical services program. So we have been in charge of making sure that the project is built to specifications, and these specifications are designed by our consulting engineers, so NHE, McBain Associates, SHN. And so our survey techniques are a mixture between this LiDAR aerial collection and then hand surveying the ground. And we're able to take all these components, such as design services and then what we collect on site, and it helps us guide the heavy equipment operators and build the site to design. There's a lot of features on this site. I've been focusing mainly on the channels and the floodplains, but we have road features, all kind of civil engineering features, which is really great. And the tolerance for this site is between a 0.1 foot and a 0.3 foot error, which means that any area in this site, these excavators whose claws are, ginormous, can only be off by a couple inches at each point. And so it's kind of a really spectacular feat that our operators are able to do with these machines. And of course, our LiDAR flights, they're really there to help us check the progress every 2 weeks and see where we're at, where we need to be. And it's just cool imagery. So this is, here is some of the LiDAR points, and this is just by elevation. This is the channel from that when we're done, and you can see the trees and stuff. And the next slide, I'm going to point out just kind of how cool this LiDAR is. So this was the regular photo taken from this imagery, and these are elk here. And these are also elk in the LiDAR model. So it's able to pick up very fine details from pretty far up and be able to create great surfaces. So as part of the technical service program, we work hand in hand with the Yurok Tribe Construction Corporation. And the Construction Corporation is mainly Yurok or Native people, which is really awesome. They have lots of experience working on the Trinity River, and we're happy to be getting more experience on these coastal projects. The Yurok Tribe Construction Corporation, I think, is an important corporation because it's providing like Native people jobs in their homelands for projects that they really care about. So to have a project in our ancestral lands like this really just hits home, and people are very happy to be working there because they don't see it as a job. They see it as affirmative action and, being actively restoring the balance of the world, which is a lot of our ceremonies. A lot of our prayer, a lot of our culture is about having balance in this world. So to have a construction corporation and projects in our homelands just means a lot to the guys and girls who work on these teams. And these are all the people, they're highly skilled. They make things happen, and I haven't seen excavator work so nice. And the way they can do it is just great. Just a couple more photos of them. So this is one of my favorite ones because this is a very large tree, and our operator here took it from across the entire site, and he was able to, maneuver it through all the small roadways so we can put it in the channel. And this tree is going to be used for fish habitat. So just a shout out to our corporation and all the hard workers there. So this project, like I said before, is a multi-year project. It's set to go until 2025. We broke ground in 2020, made some big progress in 2021 and 2022. So this is just kind of over the years of what the site was before we started. This was almost at the end of the first year of work. And then this is what we completed last year. So in 2021, the goals and main work in this area, there was just a lot of asphalt removal that happened in this Trails Gateway area. We removed a lot of sediment from the floodplains the floodplains and around this pond. And we created a first backwater pond. And these backwater ponds are set there to create fish refuge and fish habitat during high flows. An important aspect about this site is also the native plant revegetation efforts that are occurring here. The coastal redwood system it's a nice system, and it supports a very intricate and rich food web. And once all these sites get disturbed, it makes way for all the invasives to want to come here. So a big part of our efforts is once these sites get disturbed, we're immediately there with revegetation efforts. So we have a whole revegetation crew. We're working with local and county biologists to make sure that we're putting the correct native species back in place and taking efforts to mitigate any kind of invasive takeover, really. So that was 2021. These pictures don't really do justice for all the work that happened there. But I'm going to speak a little bit more on 2022 because that's when I was actually at the site and I know a little bit more about these efforts. So 2022, we worked on the site from about June to October. We have a very small window because there's bird species, protected bird species in this area, and they're very sensitive to sound. So our construction activities can only take place during a select few months during the year. 2022 was comprised of very complex movements of materials. So on the site, we had a goal, and that was to reuse as much as the existing material as possible. And so in order to create the channel, there was a lot of excavation that needed to happen from this floodplain and the channel, a lot of excavation that needed to happen from the Trails Gateway area, and then kind of exchanging those materials and building layer upon layer. We tried to mitigate how much material we're actually bringing into the site. And that was just to mitigate costs and then just to be as resourceful as possible. So a lot of the removed material from this area was actually used to build up this area. So a lot of this was built up maybe 2 to 3 feet. And then a lot of the material that was originally excavated from this area was used in the channel as river run gravel. And so it was really cool to see this whole balance of material movement. Within the channel, some of the goals were creating this kind of protected protected basis for native plants to thrive, and then also to prevent native species, invasive species to come in. And this was also complex in itself because, like I said before, you have to complete one thing before you can move to the next, and it's a lot of moving material around. So once the channel was excavated, there was another series of layering inside the channel. So we placed unfiltered river run gravel. We were able to do the surveys, made sure that was built to grade. Then we came in with processed river run gravel. Then we're able to fabric the side slopes that you're seeing here. And then we're also able to put in large woody debris, which was one of our last efforts. So these large wood structures, we put in about 52 at this site. I have Felicity's tree somewhere in this channel, but you can't see it in this picture. And that was my first tree I ever put in. So I'm very proud of that one. But we like large wood on our team because we just like creating this habitat for fish. And so our motto is the more wood, the better. So this stream is very great, as you can see from this picture, or maybe there's a lot of wood in there for our fish. And then for the floodplain, we couldn't begin the floodplain until after the
Okay, well, there you are. And you're on mute, but go ahead and pull your share back up and you can continue on.
I'm sure many of our participants know the challenges that comes with being on reservation or any kind of native lands with the broadband. So we'll just cut some slack with that slow Wi-Fi and give it back to Felicity.
Great, thank you. Let me reshare my screen. All right, where did I cut out?
We Felicity's tree, more wood the better.
Yes, that's what I like to hear. Okay. So that was kind of the process to build this channel. And this channel was approximately 800 feet from start to finish in this area. And we had to be able to finish that before we moved on to floodplain restoration. And as you can see in this photo, in the top left, that's a lot of our construction crew, and they're layering this, what we like to call lasagna treatment. And so after the ground was built to grade with the dozers and the excavators, these guys went in and laid, it was cardboard, then redwood bark, and then this coconut fabric. And this is all to keep out nasty invasive species from re-entering the site. And then also to provide like a nice healthy start for all the species we replanted in this area. And so that took a long time, but a very kind of intricate process that has turned out very nicely so far. And going into 2023, we started grubbing this year, so removing some vegetation for tree harvest, but also to create space between our work site and our sound barrier for those bird species. And going into this year, our plan is to connect the 2022 channel, which we built here, to the existing Prairie Creek channel, which goes here. And then also build another pond and floodplain back here. So this was our original pond, and our plan is to build another. Our revegetation efforts are going to continue. So all through here and here, we have a whole bunch of native species, native grasses, trees, shrubs that are put there. And in the future, it's going to help really stabilize these sites against climate change, keeping it shaded, providing cold water refuges for all these fish that we want to protect. So that's our operations this year. I'm excited to see how that goes. And again, I'll be conducting LiDAR flights every 2 weeks and processing that data and giving that to our engineers and our construction crew. And then moving forward into this project through 2024 and 2025, we're going to continue with the South Pasture floodplain. So that's this area here. Our channel ended here. So it's going to reconnect back to Prairie Creek here. We're going to pop it out through here and create another backwater pond, give more fish habitat before it reconnects and enters Redwood Creek again. The goal is to put a Yurok site here. So hiring our Yurok crews to create just a nice little Yurok village. And like I said before, that's to facilitate cultural awareness and educational efforts in that area. And then on the radar is to build a National Park Visitor Center in this area. And so those are the goals moving forward. Nothing design-wise has been set in stone. And so you'll have to stay tuned for that information. So here's my conclusion. This project is really great because at least for us, it's one of our first major coastal restoration projects. And it's really good that it's located in our ancestral lands. We do a lot of work on the Trinity River, Upper Klamath, and we have that huge dam removal coming up. But it's also important to really pay attention to these smaller stream areas, especially something like Redwood Creek, where it's just essential fish habitat for returning fish from the ocean. This project is made possible because of all our big partnerships and all the people working on it. And so it's a very, I think, complex kind of movement for the project, but all these people are willing to, just take their time and put their hearts into this project, which is really great. After this project is complete, it's going to be a very ecologically beneficial site for fish, native plants, and wildlife. I've spoken about the fish before. Definitely the native plant restoration out there is going to have a significant effect on the whole ecology of that area. And then our cultural and educational benefits from the site, especially it being located in a national park after this is over. And I think Lonix, I might have spoken a little bit faster than I practiced. So that is the conclusion of my slide, but I'm happy to go back and go into depth on any specific slides or questions that people may have.
Felicity, I am not surprised at your efficiency. Of course, you have prepared and were able to just efficiently go through all that whole lot of awesome information. So that just means we have more time to ask a bunch of awesome questions.
Great, and I love questions.
So Danielle, have you been monitoring that? Do we have any questions yet?
Yeah, so we have kind of not quite a question, but a comment. It says, "This is fantastic work, and please come back again to show the plants coming back in and the fish that are utilizing these backwaters. It would be fantastic to hear about the success of this." And so maybe I have a quick question going off of, I know the project, it's looking to be done in 2025. So I'm wondering if that's if there will be like specific studies being done on the population or anything like following up the finishing of the restoration project. What is it going to look like after that? Is there going to be like people monitoring the site to look at these beneficial, the way that the ecological system has been benefited from this project or anything like that? I know it's pretty far in the future, but that's something that's super interesting to me. So I think it'd be great to hear maybe just a little about the future of like the studies or maybe the hopes of what this will do.
Yeah, of course, that's a really good question. I'm not going to say a definitive yes, but I've heard they are going to be doing a lot of project monitoring, especially fishery biologists, and monitoring the fish that come into the streams. I don't know how long monitoring activities will take place. That's usually kind of like a wall when funding comes in for monitoring issues. But because we have so many organizations, and because the land's going to be transferred into the national park system, I'm very hopeful that there will be a nice ongoing study of whether this site has benefited fish populations or not. Which has reminded me, I just read something, because we've had these huge storm flows, that channel is full, and we have a culvert currently leading into the existing channel. So fish are already using that channel as a refuge from these storm events. And someone told me that they found a fish with a pit tag in there that was released from Klamath as a fry, and it's made its way out to the ocean and instinctually returned to Redwood Creek and Prairie Creek. So they're already finding like fish returning to this site, which is really great. And it's awesome that that channel, even though it's, you know, pretty small right now, that new creation is already being used by fish to escape these very large storm events we've been having. So I'm very hopeful for the monitoring and the benefits going forward.
Yeah, thanks for that, Felicity. Regina, if you had a question, maybe you could pop off or put it in the Q&A.
Oh, I'm not able to use the Q&A when you're in as a host, so that's why I raised my hand. I apologize for that. I do have a question though. I was wondering, I've heard a lot about the impacts of climate change on fisheries, and that people are expecting more and more fish to really need these estuary and coastal areas for feeding as the oceans become harder to feed at. And I was just wondering if you could talk at all about, I know the coastal Redwood creeks have been really impacted by logging and by loss of estuary space. And I was just wondering what you think this project will do to help fish that are impacted by climate change.
Yes, that's a good question. What I think is we can see Prairie Creek upstream in the north, where it is protected in the Redwood National Park. And we have a really nice vegetation and canopy system that helps keep those areas cool. So fish thrive in those areas where the water is cool, where it's shaded. We do have a lot of streams, kind of like our section of Prairie Creek throughout the coast, where they're very channelized, they're up against road systems, and there's not a whole lot of like good vegetation cooling the waters off. And as you said, like we have a sediment issue. And so a lot of fine sediments and other sediments are getting stuck in these streams. And as a result, you're kind of getting what I showed in that first slide, is that very channelized steep thing. So being able to go forward and make these kind of restoration efforts on these streams and creating that floodplain, I think is especially beneficial to these fish against climate change. Our vegetation efforts are trying to keep them as a cool place. We're facilitating like the habitat for microinvertebrate to provide food for these systems. And going up against climate change just has a lot of unknowns. And I think really from our team perspective is just to try to take our best approach and do what we know will benefit. So providing that habitat and then hoping that the fish also endure. And then going forward, this just opening new avenues and opportunities along the coast. And so Redwood Creek from the ocean up to Prairie Creek, it has a lot of levees right there. So in that section, as you said, I mean, there's not a whole lot of benefit for those fish because there's no floodplains. And the estuary habitat is all messed up. So hopefully going forward, we're seeing like, hey, what can we do to these sites to better help these fish and the impacts of climate change? I hope that answered your question. I wish I had a fish biologist here because they could probably speak more on like the food web.
I was
and the
gonna say,
intricacies.
Felicity, you are
but-
doubling as a fish biologist quite well, even though I know your schooling was primarily engineering. I
Yeah, I
think
should've
there's a
kept
lot to be
math.
said about having your hands on and being out there in these experiences and being able to put the big picture all together. You spoke like an excellent fish biologist, I must say.
Thank you.
So along those lines, now I'm going to ask you to be an ornithologist. Tell us about how this may benefit the birds and you're all thinking in our winged relatives.
Ooh, all right. Well, let me think on that for just a second. Because I don't know a whole lot about birds, Lennox.
I know you do, and I bet you will.
To add to
So-
that question too, sorry, just before you answer, that was a good question because one of our guests was wondering who you guys have been collaborating with on the local bird life. So maybe you could answer that with that as well.
I think the bird stuff has been a lot from the Department of Fish and Wildlife. That's my best guess on our collaborators. I imagine there's a lot of bird people within every one of those organizations that know a lot more than I do. But with birds, my first thought is how does the stream restoration and restoring balance in the stream help restore balance with condors? And the whole effort revolved around bringing back condor to our homelands was to continue the restoring of the balance in the area. So what I'm hoping to see is that healthy streams and restoration projects like this, they start at the bottom of the food web and they just, benefit every layer going up to it, and especially our condors. I would like to see the levees eventually fixed and Redwood Creek fixed to provide just more opportunities for these birds and fish to thrive. At the site, I know I mentioned before there was a limited operating time because of bird species, and that's the marbled murrelet, I believe, is in that area, and they're I'm pretty sure an endangered species or an at-risk species, and so they use that area as essential habitat and nesting. So we're also trying to create just an overall environment where all these species can thrive and have habitat. And I know we kind of took away some trees so they can't come nest on site next year, but we're in the long run, we're going to be providing a lot of opportunity for these bird species. I'm not a very good bird person, Lennox. So
Not bad.
yeah.
Not bad. If you wouldn't have said that, no one would have known, but fake it till you make it. I could imagine that as those floodplains are working, waterfowl, all kinds of things are going to really thrive because of these efforts.
Absolutely. And
Danielle,
we put structures in that floodplain. So during the off season, the birds can come and perch and they can look into our stream, and if they decide to catch any fish, they can. So we're making all of our best efforts to create a friendly environment for all species.
And I'm sure for a more thorough answer into how ongoing things are going, the Yurok tribe's wildlife department, I'm sure would do a great job. Tiana over there. In
Absolutely.
more fully answering that question specific for the birds.
She
Danielle,
is
go ahead.
bird girl.
Yeah, she's a genius. One more question we have is about the native plants. How are you sourcing them, and are you able to grow plants from seed that was locally gathered?
That's a good question. So we have a revegetation crew, and we have I'm gonna say John Bear because I'm pretty sure he's the plant guy that has done all the planting from our site. And so from my understanding, all of our plants are locally sourced from nearby nurseries. For this specific project, I don't think we have taken initiative to grow from seeds. But with that said, the Yurok tribe's revegetation crew as a whole is trying to take initiative to start their own native plant nursery, because we have the dam removal projects coming up, and we have huge revegetation efforts. And so that team, I don't know how much of it got brought to Prairie Creek, but they've collected over, billions and billions of seeds for the dam restoration. And they have grown a lot of that stuff from seeds, either to make more seeds or to plant the saplings or, the sprouts of these different things. So I'm unsure exactly on Prairie Creek. That is a larger scale effort. We are taking initiative to, create our own nursery and grow the plants ourselves and create kind of this industry so we can go out there and put all these native plants where they should be.
Yurok's got it going on in all
We
kinds
do.
of ways.
Yes, I actually got to go out with the revegetation team once, doing some seed gathering. It's super awesome project. I think we have one more crowd question, and then I'll finish this up with one more. This last question from our crowd is about, what about using land, or what about lamprey using these areas? Is that going to be a possibility, or anything that might happen?
I want to say yes, because our goal is to see, there's lamprey in Redwood Creek. So whether their migration brings us up Prairie Creek or not, we will have a suitable habitat for them to be. So yeah, I don't know how lamprey migration works as much as other fish migration, but the way we're restoring the site is to be beneficial for them as well. I could see them using the site.
Well, we know from Yurok tribal citizen Keith Parker's work, geneticist work, that there is a river maturing and an ocean maturing lamprey that overlap, and they are also anadromous, so have a similar story to those salmon. But that's for another day.
Yes, and we like to say,
I want to shift
these
it a little bit.
features, they will come. So
That's right. That's right. And so Danielle, if you will check out the chat, and I'm going to do a question, and then you can hit whatever else we got going on in the chat or in the question Q&A. So Felicity, a couple things. I wanted to get more specific to you and learn a little bit more about your journey. So you're an engineer. You're one of our first local Native people to graduate with an engineering degree from Cal Poly Humboldt, or from Humboldt. And did you know that you were going to be going in a resto supporting efforts with your skill sets? And then I have a follow-up on that about your UAV trajectory and how all that came to be as well.
Yes. When I was graduating, I had no idea. This is like a dream job come true. And so I feel really fortunate and grateful to be part of this specific team within the tribe. I kind of expected I would either get into the world of GIS, which is what I like to do, or like civil engineering, because those were kind of the avenues lined up. In this area, it typically takes a master's to get into any kind of restoration engineering position, and there's not a whole lot in this area. So when I saw this position flown, I was like, oh my God, I got to apply. And so I did, and I was very fortunate enough to get it. But overall, my goals have been to work for the Yurok tribe. I wanted to come back and be able to give whatever I learned, whatever degree I graduated with, and use my knowledge and skills to benefit the tribe. And so I started with the tribe in GIS before this position opened up. And it's just how things laid on top of each other and made it happen. I feel really happy talking about it, because not many people get to work their dream job, and here I am. So it's great.
I love how the Yurok tribal leadership has really committed to, we want to have great jobs for our people, to keep them home, to bring them home, and to flourish here, doing what we're supposed to do as human beings on this planet. So as a follow-up to that, kind of for you personally, Felicity, you're a UAV pilot. You're a UAV pilot. You're a pilot. How did all that come to be?
Well, since you ask, Cal Poly Humboldt, HSU, and through Intercept, actually, there is a faculty at Cal Poly, Dave Marshall. He runs the aviation program. And 2 years ago, he had this idea of doing this youth outreach program, really targeted towards Native youth, to stimulate their interest in STEM and aviation. So he was looking for Native science students, and he reached out to Intercept, and then I got the email through Intercept about this opportunity to be like a mentor, a facilitator for this program. And so before I did that gig, I knew what drones were, but I didn't really know much about drones, especially not their scientific capabilities. And so working with Dave Marshall in the aviation program, we were able to have this program funded through the Army Corps of Engineers. They put me through training to get my drone license. So then I went and took my test in Reading and got it. And now I've just been upgrading my drones ever since. And then more importantly, we were able to be in a position where we reached out to, it was like 9th to 12 graders within this area. And then also we had a couple students from like the East Coast and Midwest, because it was an online program. And it was an awesome program because I felt like we really got to introduce them to scientific wows through all of our presenters. We sent them a drone. We helped them go through the course, and some of them were able to pass the test and get their license. And so I loved it because it exposed me to the drone world, and it also exposed like our next generation of scientists to the drone world. So thanks to Cal Poly, yeah.
More on the drone situation. Did you ever have any snafus where maybe a drone didn't make it home?
Only one. Yes, my first larger drone I had at Apaw Village, and it ran on a battery, and drones have a return to home setting where they just fly back real fast to their last known home spot. And mine didn't have obstacle avoidance. So it's somewhere in a very large willow tree down at Apaw. So, but I've learned from my mistakes, you know, and I haven't crashed one since.
Excellent. And I think you're navigating much more expensive ones with much more expensive equipment and pretty fancy stuff.
Yes, no tricks on those. So yes.
Danielle, how's our chat and Q&A looking?
Yeah, everything's looking great. I think we answered all of our audience questions. I do have one question I think it'd be really good to finish us off with. I also in STEM fields, a local Native woman, and so I'm kind of wondering what your experience has been as like a Native woman in, you know, a lot of these spaces are really white led, and so what that has been like for you, and you know, what can kind of kept you grounded and been able to help you navigate that cultural and indigenous sense of self, also like mixing that with westernized science. Walking that fine line is something that I'm learning how to do still. And so I think any pointers for me and other upcoming, you know, Native women in STEM looking to get into these fields, into the restoration projects, all of the amazing outdoor work being done at home. It's eventually my goal to be outside all the time also. So just any tips, tricks, anything that kind of helped you would be really, really awesome to hear about.
Of course. First off, yes, congratulations. I mean, we're a very small percentage of scientists in any field. So I will always like to see other women in these STEM fields up and rising and as enthusiastic as you are. My personal experience is, I think it's been fairly well. I do look around me and I see a lot of men, not so much in my program, but in the industry, a lot of non-Native people in my industry. And I'm just going to go into an example. I went to a conference in Denver in February. It's called Geo Week, and it's all like the surveyors and LiDAR people and aviation people from across the country. And male and white dominated. So I was like a minority within a minority. And at first it seemed kind of daunting to be like surrounded by these people who I might not have a whole lot in common with. But I kept an open mind and everyone was very receptive to things I had to say, especially when it comes to cultural things. So my advice would just be open. And when people may not seem like they understand where you're coming from a cultural background, from, being a woman, kind of like, it's like, hey, I'm going to tell you about this experience, and like it's like expecting them to be receiving of what you have to say, but also being patient with maybe they don't get it right off the bat. So my experience is say it once, say it twice, say it 3 times, make your presence known until people get it, but don't get frustrated off the bat with people who may not understand. So really just sharing my views and my ideas and my experiences with people who don't have the same things, and then also learning from their own experiences to just tie everyone together and create a nice community.
Thank you. That's super great to hear. Definitely looking forward to that future. I was at Lennox, if you have anything to start as our closing out, I can end with a few announcements.
We still got 5 minutes or 4 minutes, and I wanted to chime in on what Felicity was saying. And yes, when we go off to these institutions, we're still the minority, but we also have some spaces that are as good as it gets for that dynamic and operating within systems that are of the dominant society. I think that's the place that special places like Cal Poly Humboldt and our much of our nativeness, or all of our collective efforts to make it as native centric as we possibly can. And so what's going on in the Native American studies, what's going on with their food sovereignty lab, what happens in Intercept and ITEP to support you all. Those are some of the special things that we have here that absolutely contribute towards the success of Native people. So definitely take advantage of all those, as you will soon be transferring, I understand, Danielle. And for Felicity, I know you are aware that we have a master's engineering program coming soon,
I've heard about it.
Which will be led by a Native woman, Dr. Kuala Ketchum.
Yes, Kuala.
So that's forthcoming, and we got all those things going. And this is what we do. It's what we do as Native peoples. We hold it down and we carry on, and we get back to being the humans that we know we need to be. And sometimes that requires going and getting these degrees.
That is true.
All
yes,
right,
and
well, go ahead.
I'm gonna say one last thing, like Danielle, to what you were saying earlier. It's like a lot of times we are the very first of our kind in an organization, and it kind of seems scary, but it's an opportunity, I think, to put our knowledge and like our TEK and our insight on the world into those industries and organizations. So like being that first to plant the seed in those places and having it grow so we can be more Native centric everywhere.
Absolutely. Danielle or Regina, either of you, if you'd like to comment about next week's speaker. And thank you so much, Felicity, for your time, and it's been a real pleasure to spend this time with you, and thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We will do this again.
Yes.
All right. I have a lot of projects.
Well, I'd love to hear about all of them. Yeah, so next week we'll be having the next episode is on April 5th at 12 p.m. It is Restoring Central Valley Watersheds. We have presenters from the Machupta tribe, Hilo Ramirez, and from California Trout. And so that's going to be really exciting and awesome. And then one more announcement, kind of going off that last question. Tomorrow at 6 p.m., Save California Salmon is hosting a webinar to end Women's History Month, honoring Native women, specifically the intergenerational knowledge that is passed from one generation of Native women to the next, really paying homage to all of that knowledge and what it gives us, not only as we go into, these higher education spaces and into these careers, but the values it instills in us throughout our life, and the way that it really, helps shape us into those caregivers and those community providers, and everything that a Native woman is, an engineer and a scientist, and all of the amazing places that we hold. And that'll be posted on all of our social medias and the Save California Salmon website, the Facebook, Instagram. So I definitely encourage you to check that out if you're trying to pay some homage to Native women and the knowledge that's held in that community. It's going to be really beautiful. We have Susan Maston from the Yurok tribe, her niece Tamaya Wiki, who was able to learn from her, Margot Robbins of the Yurok tribe, and me. Margot's been a longtime mentor of mine, so being able to pay homage to that. And then we also have Lynn Risling and my cousin Tori McConnell speaking on, the importance of art in all of these movements. And so it's going to be, we'll be talking TEK and education. Good Fire, we'll be talking art is as activism, and what kind of, the creative outlets that are available and what role they play in so many of our lives. And then also, what the importance of Native people in leadership positions across the nation. Sue Maston she's been in so many powerful positions. So to hear her speak on that is going to be really phenomenal. And so, yeah, I encourage you all to check that out. Definitely join us on April 5th for the next episode. And then again, thank you so much, Felicity. It's been an honor to just listen to you and hear about this project. I will be checking it out on the 25th, actually, as part of the SRF conference. So I'm really excited to go and be in person there, now that I know all the good work that's going down. And then
also come join us and our cute friends here at Humboldt's California Indian Big Time, April 8th.
Yes.
Goodbye, you all. Michaela, take us home.